MTN's had a tough year. The telecoms group has reported a profit hit. Headline earnings per share have decreased 72%. That's due to a number of factors. Chief amongst them is troubles at its largest business unit, Nigeria. A currency devaluation there caused the division to fall into a loss-making position, and this dragged down the group's full-year earnings. It's also had to deal with higher inflation, increased costs and cash-strapped consumers in its three largest markets, Nigeria, South Africa and Ghana, and this too weighed on profitability. Despite the balance sheet knock, MTN has decided to reward shareholders. A final dividend of R3.30 has been declared. This is in line with the previous period's payout. AdvTech has reported an almost 20% rise in annual earnings. That's thanks to higher enrollments and moderate fee increases across all parts of its education division. The group says demand remains high, and so it believes that it can continue on its growth trajectory. A full-year dividend of 87 cents has been declared. This is an increase of 45% on last year's payout. Gemfield has plunged into the red. The precious gemstones miner has posted an annual loss of $2.8 million. That's from a profit of $74.3 million previously. The swing is due to a write-down of its investment in platinum group miner Sedibelo Resources, which is based in South Africa. That's amid plummeting prices for platinum group metals. Other factors that also weighed include lower output and the cancellation of an emerald auction. The future of Mafube coal is in jeopardy. The Department of Water and Sanitation has turned down its application for a water use license, which is critical to extend the mine's tailings facilities. The thermal coal mine is jointly owned by Exxaro and Thungela, and the joint venture has warned that unless set aside, the decision will make it impossible to continue with mining activities. The extension of the discard facility is part of a life extension project at Mafube, the value of which Exxaro has put at 1.9 billion rand. The parties are now headed to court in a bid to find a solution to the impasse. South Africans are feeling a bit more upbeat. Consumer confidence has improved in the first quarter. The FNB Consumer Confidence Index registered a reading of minus 15 points during the period. That's from minus 17 points previously. FNB Chief Economist Mamelo Matikingangwenya says lower levels of load shedding and a deceleration in inflation supported the improvement. Further afield, Apple, Alphabet and Meta platforms will be investigated for potential breaches of the Digital Markets Act, potentially leading to hefty fines for the companies. Let's listen to this report for more.
Three of the world's top tech giants face investigations in the EU. Antitrust regulators said Monday Apple, Alphabet's Google and Meta will be investigated for potential breaches of the Digital Markets Act. The law became effective from March 7th. It has strict rules for 6 gatekeepers, which are companies which provide services like search engines, social networks and chat apps used by other businesses. The gatekeepers must comply with guidance to ensure a level playing field for rivals and to give users more choices. Violations could result in fines of as much as a tenth of the company's global annual turnover. The European Commission said it suspects the measures put in place by these gatekeepers fall short of effective compliance under the Act. EU Antitrust Chief Margrethe Vestager.
Decisions to open non-compliance investigation, they come only 2 weeks after the implementation deadline has passed and show that the DMA compliance is something that we take really seriously.
The EU competition enforcer will investigate Apple's rules on steering in Google Play and self-preferencing on Google Search. It will also look at Apple's rules on steering in the App Store and the choice screen for Safari. Meta's pay or consent model has also caught their attention. A Meta spokesperson said the company was working to comply with the Act's guidance. Google said it would defend its approach in the coming months. Apple said it was confident its plan complied with the Digital Markets Act. Regulators aim to wrap up the investigations within a year.
And in deal-making news, the German national soccer team has ditched homegrown sportswear brand Adidas to partner up with Nike. Here's our reporter Ndaleng Lechela with more.
Well, Zinati, there's not much Germans can get more emotional about than football. And this past weekend, emotions boiled over as the country's national team announced to switch from German sportswear maker Adidas to Nike as a sponsor. And joining me now to share all the detail is Lars Halter with Deutsche Welle. Lars, thanks so much for your time today. Now, as we start, just take us through the thinking behind the deal.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Well, let me tell you, it was quite a shock indeed for fans. Speaking for myself, I'm not even that big on soccer, and for me it was an absolute stunner when I read that the national team is ending its 70-year-long relationship with Adidas to be replaced by the big US competitor Nike. Now, the US company is the largest in the sector by far and has always spent way more money on professional endorsements and sponsorships than anyone else, and it has had enormous branding success, like the Air Jordan basketball sneakers, for example, that have long been a billion-dollar business all by itself. Now, talking about massive amounts of money, Nike is reportedly paying the German team 100 million euros per year, and that was about twice as much as Adidas has paid them. So when Economy Minister Robert Habeck criticized the deal over the weekend, saying that he would have appreciated some loyalty and economic patriotism from the German Soccer Federation, they had a quick response. Had Nike just outbid the competitor by a few million, they would have likely stuck with their old partner. That is what management said. But given the massive amount Nike was willing to fork over, that was just not an option. Loyalty is not paying the bills, is what they said.
Now let's talk about the magnitude of this deal. Why is it such a huge story for Germans?
Well, like I said, we are not just talking about some sports sponsorship. There's just so much history, and it's not only sports history either, it's German history. Adidas became a sponsor of the German national team for the World Cup in 1954, and that is obviously way before sponsorship was even a thing. There was no money in sports back then, and it was the German coach back then that went to Adidas and asked them for help, because it was a few years after the war, and there was no money for football. Adidas paid for the team's expenses, for travel, for jerseys, and they even invented the modern cleats system to help get players more grip on the field. Germany won the World Cup in 1954 as a total underdog, propelling Adidas to legendary status too, at a time when that company was just a relatively small shoemaking firm in a little Bavarian town. Today, of course, Adidas is itself one of the biggest companies in the business, holding sponsorships around the world and still dominating much of soccer worldwide.
Before I let you go, what does this deal tell us about the sports world in general?
Well, it does tell us how some sports are playing a different role than they used to be. Football was long Adidas territory, not least because the company had been involved for so long and had been helping the sport develop. Again, for example, by inventing those modern cleats. Also, football was long the #1 sport in Europe, with not too much business in the US, for example. And that has changed. Soccer is growing across the pond, but also in Asia and other markets. And Nike has long gotten into the game after spending decades focusing mostly on basketball, baseball, track and field, and some other sports. And looking at Nike's philosophy, they don't play for second, they're playing to win. And while the German team has not been that strong in recent years, Germany is definitely one of the biggest markets worldwide, and one that was too big for Nike to ignore any longer. And they came in at the right moment, it seems. In a friendly this weekend, Germany actually beat France 2-0. That is a much stronger showing than anyone had been expecting, although they were still playing in Adidas, of course, because the switch to Nike won't happen until 2027.
Lars, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for your time today. That was Lars Halter from DW.